What if I told you the reason so many Black families still struggle to build wealth today is not just about spending habits, bad choices, or not working hard enough? What if the real problem started generations ago, when whole Black neighborhoods were blocked from the one thing that built wealth in America: homeownership? And even though those old rules are gone, the damage never really left. In this video, we're talking about how redlining still shows up in our neighborhoods, our home values, and our bank accounts today. Because if you don't understand what was done to us economically, you will keep blaming yourself for pain that was planned long before you were born. Before we even talk about investing, saving, or credit, we need to talk about housing. Because in America, a house was never just a place to sleep. It was stability. It was safety. It was something to pass down. It was school access. It was neighborhood access. It was the foundation of wealth. And for Black families, that foundation was attacked on purpose. A house meant your kids might grow up on a calmer street. A house meant you might have something to borrow against in an emergency. A house meant that instead of every dollar going out, some of that money might start building equity and coming back to you. A house meant roots. It meant control. It meant that maybe, just maybe, your children would not have to start from zero.
That is why this conversation is so important. Because when people talk about wealth, they love to make it sound like a simple issue of discipline. Save more, spend less, work harder. And yes, discipline matters. But when one group was allowed to buy into the wealth-building system and another group was pushed out of it, you're not dealing with a simple motivation problem. You're dealing with a rigged foundation.
Back in the 1930s, neighborhoods were literally graded on maps. Some areas were marked as safe for loans and investment. Others were marked as risky. And if Black people lived there, that area was often treated like it was dangerous by default. So Black families were denied fair mortgages, denied access, denied opportunity, and denied the same wealth-building path that white families were given. Think about how cold that is. Not judging a family by whether they paid bills, not judging a person by whether they worked hard, just looking at where Black people lived and deciding, no, not there, not them, not worth the risk. That meant white families could get help buying homes in growing neighborhoods, while Black families were often boxed into places with less investment, fewer resources, and lower chances for property value growth. So from the very beginning, the game was not equal. One side was being helped up the ladder. The other side was being told to climb with weights on their ankles. And once that happens, the damage multiplies. Because housing is not just about a roof. Housing determines access. Access determines opportunity. Opportunity shapes the future. When you deny somebody the chance to buy a home in a growing neighborhood, you are not just denying them shelter. You are denying equity. You are denying appreciation. You are denying inheritance. You are denying better schools, better services, and better financial options. You are cutting off a whole chain reaction of wealth before it even starts. You are also deciding whose neighborhood gets protected and whose neighborhood gets neglected. Whose block gets trees? Whose block gets attention? Whose block gets quality stores? Whose block gets treated like it matters? That is why it is so important to stop thinking about this like an old paperwork issue. This was not paperwork. This was power. A lot of people act like redlining is ancient history, like it happened a long time ago, so we should be over it by now. But when the foundation is broken, the damage does not disappear just because time passes. The same neighborhoods that were cut off from investment years ago are still more likely to deal with lower wealth, more poverty, weaker schools, worse health outcomes, and less opportunity. That is not coincidence. That is the aftershock of policy. And this is where people get frustrated, because they can feel the difference, even if they do not have the language for it. They can see that some neighborhoods seem to recover faster. Some neighborhoods get renovated faster. Some neighborhoods get respected faster. And some neighborhoods stay stuck in a cycle where people have to fight for basic dignity. That is not because Black people do not know how to live right. That is not because Black families do not love their communities. That is not because nobody wants better.
It is because damage compounds, neglect compounds, lost opportunity compounds. When a family misses one generation of wealth building, that hurts. When a community misses generation after generation of fair investment, that becomes structural pain. So yes, the old lines on the maps may be faded, but the consequences are still walking around in broad daylight.
Even now, the barriers did not magically disappear. Black homeownership is still far behind white homeownership. Black borrowers still deal with more mortgage denials. Black homeowners often face heavier housing burdens. And even when a Black family buys a home, the value of that home may still be judged differently, depending on the neighborhood. So the system may look more polished today, but the inequality is still hitting people in real life. That is what makes this so frustrating. People act like because discrimination is less open, it is less real. But polished unfairness is still unfairness. Now, it may come through lending standards that feel harder to clear. It may come through higher housing burdens. It may come through insurance costs, appraisal issues, or neighborhoods being treated as less valuable, even when families are doing everything they can to maintain them.
So the modern version is not always a man saying, "You can't live here." Sometimes it is a system quietly making it harder, more expensive, slower, and more exhausting for you to build in the first place. And after a while, that constant friction becomes part of people's lives. It wears them down. It makes them second-guess themselves. It makes them hesitate to dream bigger. So the modern version is not always a man saying, "You can't live here." Sometimes it is a system quietly making it harder, more expensive, slower, and more exhausting for you to build in the first place. And after a while, that constant friction becomes part of people's lives. It wears them down. It makes them second-guess themselves. It makes them hesitate to dream bigger.
The appraisal problem. This part is especially painful. Because imagine finally getting in the game. You buy the house. You fix it up. You take care of it. You do everything right. And then somebody comes in and says your property is worth less anyway. That is not just insulting, that is financially dangerous. Because if your home is undervalued, your equity is weaker, your options are smaller, and your family walks away with less wealth than it should have. That means less power if you want to refinance, less power if you want to borrow for repairs, less power if you want to use that property to help a child, less power if you ever have to sell and move. So even when Black families manage to get the asset itself can still be discounted. And that hits different, because home value is not just a number on paper.
For a lot of people, that home represents years of sacrifice, skipped vacations, extra shifts, tired mornings, tight budgets, holding on when money was short. So when that value is treated like it is worth less, it feels like the family's effort is being treated like it is worth less too. That is why this issue matters so much. Because unfair value becomes lost wealth, and lost wealth becomes another generation forced to work harder for less. So what do? First, we stop blaming ourselves for a system we did not create. Second, we get smarter about housing, ownership, and protection. Third, we stop treating home ownership like the only answer and start building multiple layers of wealth: savings, investments, insurance, business ownership, estate planning. Because if one system was used to block us, then our response has to be strategy, not shame. We have to think in layers now. If one door was historically closed, we learn how to strengthen every other door we can reach.
That means emergency savings, so one crisis does not wipe us out. That means learning how credit works instead of fearing it. That means understanding life insurance as protection, not just expense.
That means seeing business ownership as another path to control. That means not just making money, but directing money. And that mindset shift matters. Because the goal is not just to survive the month. The goal is to slowly reduce how vulnerable the family is to disruption. That takes time. That takes patience. That takes consistency.
Next, protect what you build. This is where a lot of families lose ground. Not just in building wealth, but in keeping it. A home with no will can become confusion. Property with no plan can become family conflict. Assets with no protection can disappear fast. So we have to normalize paperwork, planning, beneficiaries, legal structure, and real conversations. That is not boring. That is legacy. A lot of people love the idea of leaving something behind, but they do not prepare the structure that helps it stay in the family. And that is where good intentions fall apart. You can work your whole life for a home and still leave your children chaos if nothing is organized. You can own property and still lose family peace if there is no plan. You can build something beautiful and watch it get picked apart because nobody wanted to have those conversations.
Next, teach the next generation differently. Our children need more than motivation. They need understanding. They need to know that wealth is not only about making money, it is about keeping value, protecting value, passing value down. If they learn that early, they move differently. They ask better questions. They make stronger decisions. And they stop measuring success by appearances alone. They need to know the difference between income and assets. They need to know the difference between something that looks expensive and something that actually grows in value. They need to understand that ownership creates options. They need to understand that paperwork matters. They need to understand that the goal is not just to make money fast, but to keep the family from always having to start over.